to thank everyone for tuning in to the 25th Hour radio show here on Monster Radio AM 1150 and 98.5 FM WGGH. I am your host, Rob Fairless, and on the phone with me today is United States Army veteran and actor C.J. Graham. Now, since this Friday is Friday the 13th, I thought it'd be pretty cool to have one of the men that played the part of hockey mask wearing, machete wielding, killing machine Jason Voorhees. And that's exactly what C.J. did in Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, a fan favorite of the franchise, as a matter of fact. CJ, thanks for taking time out of your day to join me on the show.
Hey, Rob, thanks for having me and letting me talk to the fans out there in Radio Land.
No problem, man. CJ, I want to start this interview off a little different than maybe what you're used to. I might be wrong about that. I'd like to acknowledge your service to our country. Thank you for that, and ask you a couple questions about your time in the Army, man. Let's start like this. What was your inspiration behind joining the Army in the first place?
Well, I'm one of those people that came from a family where a father died. My dad died when I was 3 years old. So in the 60s, I did not have a father. I had a younger brother, and my mom raised two boys. So of that era is a little different than today's era. So my inspiration was to go into the military and get some stepping stones for the rest of my life, the rest of my career as I went through it.
Now, what was your job while you were in the Army?
I was 11 Bravo 20, which means I was infantry. I was in the United States Army. I went in as a private, just like anybody else. And then over my 4 years, of course, I went through promotional processes and became a sergeant, E5. So I was 11 Bravo 20 when I ETS'd, estimated time of service. I was also cross-trained as a 15 Echo, which means I would assist if the missiles, Persian missile member went down. I, as the infantry, would step in to launch that missile.
Now, we spoke before we started recording here how it's been quite a while since you've been in the military. What do you remember most about your time in the Army?
Well, yeah, it has been. I was in 47 years ago, which is quite a long time ago. But I will tell you, integrity and honor, I took away from it. And over my career, where I retired about 4 years ago as a chief operating officer, general manager of multiple casino resorts, I always took that aspiration as far as everything being fair, everything being square. And I always looked at people for the quality within, not just what they had on a piece of paper, because I just had a high school diploma and I had my 4-year college degree, which was my honorable discharge.
So let's get to talking about Jason, man. Since my show is only 30 minutes in length, I'm not going to have time to discuss every minor detail about your journey in becoming Jason, but I think we got enough time to cover some very key moments, that's for sure. Let's talk about how you got the part. You weren't even an actor at the time, right? You really didn't even knowingly audition for the part.
No, I wasn't. And, falling back on my military, I was the general manager of a nightclub in Los Angeles, and the hypnotist I had on Thursday nights wanted to do a production of his subjects going under. Well, they picked a company that did part 4, all the special effects. And they kind of just hinted to the hypnotist, well, they've got the wardrobe from Ted White in Jason Part 4. Let's put CJ in it because he's big and do a little horse scene. Unbeknownst to me, it was so successful when I came through the screen that they made that comment they were going to cast me. And as I said, the rest is history. And sometimes luck is involved in getting those key jobs.
So who was the first person you contacted to tell that you were going to be Jason, and what was their reaction to that?
Well, believe it or not, it was my mom. Like I said earlier, she raised a couple of boys back in the 60s and early 70s. So I was the first person I reached out to. And she didn't know the first thing about Jason or Friday the 13th. That genre kind of went through her and did not connect with her. So to her, it was like, okay, are they paying you? And yeah, they're going to pay me really well, I think. And I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to Covington, Georgia. And off I went.
Now, were you a Friday the 13th fan before you were cast in that role?
Not per se. I was more of a Universal horror fan, the old black and whites with the Frankensteins and the mummies and Dracula. I understood the director, Tom McLaughlin. He was the writer-director of the film. He also was of a horror, Universal horror background. And so he was very clear in the part that I'd be playing as Jason and what he was looking for rather than a zombie. Since Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason come back to life like with a lightning bolt, very similar to Frankenstein of the 60s.
Now, did you study how the previous actors portrayed Jason and try to blend together their style, or did you try to bring your own version of Jason to the table?
I walked in with my own version based on the direction from the director, Tom McLaughlin. And again, looking back on my military, I was just a soldier doing what I was told to do and following orders.
Now, since you hadn't ever been an actor or starred in any films before Jason Lives, did you have a hard time adjusting to any part of the filmmaking process? The makeup, the wardrobe, not laughing when you're trying to act serious?
No, actually, the interesting thought is that, playing Jason and being a stuntman, something I'd never been to school for, being 20 feet underwater, breathing off regulars, chained down to the bottom, or being set on fire, going through doors and walls, was just kind of a natural instinct. You're, in your late 20s, you've only been on the military, half a dozen years, and you feel pretty strong when you're coming through the wall and you just kind of pound through it. I guess I still am 6'3", 250, so I'm not of small nature or stature. But for me, it was just a natural instinct when I put the wardrobe on to come through as I did physically every time I opened the door and walked into a room.
Now, once filming was complete and you were able to watch the finished product, in its entirety, were you pleased with how it turned out, or was there some scenes you wished you might have done differently?
I was pleased personally because I didn't know what to expect personally. I did not even go to the opening when I got back to Los Angeles. I was given an opportunity to take over as a general manager of a nightclub restaurant, a private nightclub restaurant owned by Jackie Collins in Beverly Hills. So I went right back to work when I got back to Los Angeles. But once I did see it, I was pleased with myself just because I didn't know what I was doing. I was following gut instinct in everything I did. So, like I said, sometimes your resume reads you can do it, but once you get the job, you got to perform. And, sometimes luck is involved. And I think in some cases I was lucky that I didn't break my neck.
What's cool about the internet and YouTube is the fact that we now have what's called fan films available that you can find online, and you've done a few of those yourself. One of those is Friday the 13th Vengeance that you starred in as Jason Voorhees' father, Elias Voorhees, and I think you just finished wrapping up the second installment, Vengeance 2 Bloodlines. Now, I know Vengeance has millions of views online, and I expect Bloodlines to follow suit. There's definitely a niche for fan-made films nowadays, so there's two parts to this question here, man. How were you approached to be a part of Vengeance, and were you skeptical about being a part of a fan-made film since they're relatively new?
I wasn't skeptical, but I did retire, as I said, about 4 years ago. So my time availability became more open where I could do these conventions and fan films. The one thing that was exciting to me about it is playing Elias Voorhees. Since it had always been mentioned in the comic books and some of the storylines of Elias Voorhees, and nobody had ever stepped into the role, theoretically, I would be the first person on screen to put on those boots and become Elias. The other thing is, on the second side of the question, the technology has advanced so dramatically in the last 10 years, 15 years, that the technology and the way fan films are done with the type of cameras and the people that want to get involved is really of success. You got to remember, Michael Bay did not always, wasn't Michael Bay. Steven Spielberg was not Steven Spielberg. They were just young people making films in their backyard in some ways and then getting that break. And of course, there is always luck, like I said. And look at both them gentlemen now. They're just huge.
Yeah, what's the story in Vengeance? Does it play off any of the theatrical versions of Friday the 13th, or does it stand alone?
The Friday the 13th Vengeance that I did, the first one, was actually a spinoff of what Part 7 would have originally been if they'd stayed with the storyline. So Jason does come back out of the water after being dropped to the bottom of the lake. And then it just proceeds to the introduction of Elias Voorhees, thus trying to put together some of the DNA behind Jason, not just mommy, but the father. I just wrapped about a month ago with Part 2, Bloodlines, again playing Elias Voorhees. Same character, same mentor, so to speak. And again, this opportunity, we get to get into Mother a little more, but it is more about the Jason, the DNA, and Elias Voorhees. The nice thing about the last one we just did is there are several cameos with actors and actresses that are part of not just the Friday the 13th franchise, but of the Halloween franchise. So it's kind of nice to see, and there is a couple surprises in there for the fans.
So when can we expect Vengeance 2 Bloodlines to drop?
They're looking at dropping it the first quarter of 2022. They've just wrapped and completed here 4 weeks ago for our part. I do know they'd like to shoot one little special item they'd like me to come back in November to do, because my schedule is so tight over the next couple months with conventions. And it's just a small add-on they want to put into a memory capsule, so to speak. And I won't let the genie out of the bottle, so to speak, but I think they're going to have to wait for that, which is November 19th. I think they'll have it all wrapped and ready to go by that time, so they can just insert it to the film where they want it. And then I think they're going for the first part of the year.
Now, you mentioned the conventions that you're attending. I bet you are getting kind of busy since Halloween's right around the corner. Has COVID affected the conventions in any way?
Yeah, last year we all got affected by the unfortunate experience and people passing away, and just how bad it had gotten. So a lot of the shows rolled over to this year, thus doubling up a lot of people's schedule, including myself. The exciting thing is we've had some successes in the last couple months with the conventions, and of course the volume of people. I'm getting ready to do a convention this weekend that's already sold out. You can't even buy tickets for it.
Man, isn't it something after all these years how popular this franchise still is? What's your take on that, man? What is it about the character Jason Voorhees that the fans just won't let him stay dead? I mean, why do you think there's always been a desire for more films to be made?
Well, the thing about the Friday the 13th franchise, and it's my opinion, but I do believe that the fans look at it through a different pair of binoculars, because it is a character that theoretically could be outside your door right now. There's no cameras involved. There's no special effects. You don't have to jump out of an airplane at 10,000 feet. There's no dreams involved. This is just a character coming through the wall with a machete and does not seem to want to die, very similar to Frankenstein. So I think the fans are attracted to the fact that it's not over the hill too much. I think the other side of the coin is, I'll give an example. If there's about 1.3 billion people in India, go over there and show anybody a picture of Tom Cruise, they'll all say, hey, Tom Cruise. You show them a picture of C.J. Graham or one of the other gentlemen that has played the Friday the 13th Jason, they'll shrug their shoulders, but I guarantee you show them a picture of Jason in a hockey mask, they'll all say Friday the 13th.
I bet. What about website, social media, etc.? What's your favorite platform that the fans can find you hanging out on?
The simplest is Jason6. I have a Facebook that's fully loaded. I do pay attention to it on a regular basis. I have a website also, jason6.com, which I interact with fans and people can connect with me directly. I'm pretty simple to get a hold of. I'm low maintenance, as I tell people. And now that I'm retired, I'm very honored 3 decades later that we're talking about Friday the 13th and that I have a fan base like I do. So I do my best to play it forward and try to give back as much as I can to make sure I enjoy it. I just did a convention this past weekend, Robin. As I said, one of the fans came up, was 3 years old, in full wardrobe, and stayed in character the whole time. It was a girl, did not say a word the whole time until she took her hockey mask off, and then she started dialogue. So how amazing is that? A 3-year-old. And then, of course, people 70, 75 years old, and everybody has a story about the first time they saw Friday the 13th with their brother, their sister. They were sneaking around the corner. So it's kind of an exciting time for a lot of people at one point of their life or another.
Well, CJ, we're about out of time here on the show today. Is there anything you'd like to mention that I failed to bring up? Any plugs, any words of wisdom before we wrap things up here?
No, I'm just appreciative. I do appreciate the fans out there. I mean that. I really do appreciate the fact that they're following the Friday the 13th so patiently after 40 years. And I know it's been about 10 years since the last film from the studios. I hope to get that resolved shortly and get a couple of them out there for the fans. I always tell people, let's don't forget how we got here, and that's the fans. So thank you to the fans.
Well, CJ, it's been fun having you on the show today, man. Thanks again for taking time out to do this. It's been killer.
My pleasure, Rob. Thank you.